All right, what is up, everyone? Welcome back to another Lure Lab episode here on the Serious Angler Network. As always, I am your host, the Captain Andrew Full, and today we are having a transition episode where we're talking about transitioning from the summer into fall. And we have an Elite Series guest joining us today. He's already been on the show once, and I believe we talked about jerk baits with him, and it's Alex Redwine. And the first thing I want to say about Alex is he had an incredible end to his Elite Series year, requalified for next year, and then he goes out and wins the Super BFL on Lake Erie out of Sandusky to wrap up his season. So we're going to dive into that quickly, and then we're going to talk about his top 3 lures for that late summer into fall transition. So let's get Alex on here. We're going to congratulate him and then get talking baits. What's up, buddy? How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good, man. It was awesome to see you have a strong finish. I think we can both say we wish every event was up north for you. And congrats on the big win.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it felt really good to finally get that momentum in the last few events. Granted, it was kind of in my comfort zone in my strong suit, but yeah, hopefully we can carry that over into next year and just kind of be more consistent next year and stay into the middle or upper half of the pack. And then yeah, to top it off with that BFL win for the Buckeye division for the BFLs on Lake Erie was pretty awesome. You know, there's a lot of good names that fish Lake Erie, and for me to come out on top was pretty cool to have a few good days of fishing.
You beat your buddy by what, 1 ounce?
Yeah,
2
yeah, it was like,
ounces?
it was almost like our weights flip-flopped. Like the first day I had like a 3 pound lead. I had like 23 pounds. And then the second day I only had 20 pounds, but my buddy Jeremy had 23 pounds the second day, and it's like our weights almost flip-flopped. So it made pretty interesting to be
Banter
able
in the weigh-in tanks too, I'm sure, because you were probably right next to each other, weren't you? Just
yeah, he
like,
weighed in
oh,
like
you're like, oh boy.
yeah. So like I saw him take his fish out of the live well, cause so I talked to Jeremy on the water like maybe like an hour and a half before we were gonna go in, and he was like, "Oh, I only got like 17 pounds," and he was telling me the truth. He's like, "But I think I'm gonna go do a Hail Mary and run some other stuff that I've never fished like the last 2 or 3 years." And then I get back to weigh in at the same time as him, and he's like, "Man, like it was crazy in the last hour." And I was like, "What do you mean by that?" And he's like, "I don't know what I got. I didn't weigh him." And he's taking his fish out of the live well, and I was like, "Whoa, those are some big fish." And yeah, he weighed in, and it was just over 23 pounds, and I knew that I had like right around 20 pounds, and I was like, "Man, this is actually gonna be pretty close." And then
Nail
yeah,
biter.
yeah, and literally 1 ounce.
Oh my gosh. But congrats. It's awesome. And I'm sure you guys celebrated a little bit after that for the 1-2 finish as well. So it was awesome to see. I actually think I saw Jeremy's post, and that's how I found out about how you were leading day one. And I shot you a text, and I had no idea you guys were buddies. And you're like, oh, that's my buddy. And I was like, oh, this is kind of funny. So,
Yeah,
but yeah, super congrats to you, man. I hope 2024 is great for you. But let's kind of hop in here, right? Like, so we're talking your top 3 baits for the summer, like late summer into fall transition. And I think this is one of the more tricky times of year, but if you figure them out, it can be one of the most like satisfying and fun times of year. So jumping right into the bat here, like right in the cage, what is your first lure you pick up during this transitional time?
yeah. So I'm gonna kind of break down largemouth. I'm kind of gonna move away from smallmouth. I'm from like southwestern Ohio, so it's a lot of more, not a ton of crazy good fishing. But just
It's
thinking
still
about
fishing.
like that transition just kind of gives me a headache already. But yeah, I'm gonna jump in. These are just kind of some baits that first come to mind. I'm actually currently rigging up for a small little local tournament here around town tomorrow. So I kind of got a bunch of rods set out. But I mean, heck, it is the end of September. The transition is pretty much happening right now. So this is kind of a perfect time to dive into that. But I kind of picked out 3 baits. I picked out a top water, a crankbait, and then a flipping style bait. But I'll jump into the top water first,
Oh,
because
such a fun bait this time of year.
yeah. So this file looks kind of familiar. This is just a Berkeley Chopo. I got it on 30 pound, just straight braid. Obviously, this can be fun when those fish completely annihilate it sometimes. But the reason I kind of picked this out first because this is kind of a nasty time of year. The fish aren't exactly in their fall frenzy. They're not exactly in their summer patterns or not really grouped up like they were in the summer. But this is just something because in a tournament, like at the end of the day, you're just looking for 5 bites. You're not looking to catch. Sometimes, at least where I'm at, you're like your your odds of catching 15, 20 fish a day aren't very good, but you just kind of glue something in your hand and just try to make it work. Just try to get 5 bites. And like this is just something that you can just kind of go down the bank. Maybe there is some sort of little shallow bite happening or some sort of morning bite during this transition. And this is just something that you can kind of glue in your hand, cover a bunch of water with, and I mean, if it's not happening yet, like you can kind of force this bait to work. Like maybe you're 2, 3, 4 weeks away from this bait really shining. When it does get that fall, when those fish do start blowing things, pushing bait into the back of pockets and stuff, so you can kind of force this thing to work. It might not be completely on yet, but it's close to being on. But this can obviously land a lot of key fall good bites.
Now, is there specific size used in that? And I'm assuming that's the Chapo, right?
Yeah, this is the Berkeley Chopper. This is just the 105. I feel like this is an all-around like good size. Like it's not too big, it's not too small. I feel like 12, 14, 15 inchers can eat this well, get a hook in them, and also bigger fish, 4, 5, 6 pounders can also eat this bait well. I do have some smaller sizes and bigger sizes, but I feel like this is just almost like a good, well-rounded size. Like I said, I feel like a lot of fish still have the opportunity to get a hook in it, to slap it and get a piece of it. But yeah, I just got it. This is a 7 foot medium heavy rod. It's just because I kind of like it a little bit shorter, a little bit flimsy, where I can make accurate casts, whether it's overhanging trees in the shade, around docks or whatever. And like I said, 30 pounds, just straight braid. This is kind of so like topwater fishing all day. It can be a lot of work, just like on your body physically. So I kind of try to have some sort of light setup. Like this is Abu Xenon rod and a Xenon reel, so like you can just already kind of imagine of how light this combo is and
Mhm.
how kind of easy, and you won't get fatigued and stuff. So that's kind of my go-to for just trying to pluck off a few maybe bonus fish
Yeah.
through
And
the.
what would you call like a high percentage area to throw that bait currently in this transitional time?
Yeah, so like you can obviously kind of start out in like the backs of pockets. If those fish are there yet, if those fish are starting to push bait fish back, whether there's a good creek channel that runs to the back of that pocket or what, or like I said, we're only looking for 5 bites, and you could just like glue this bait in your hand and just go down some sort of steep, rocky, or some sort of like bank that's gonna have a lot of shade on it. Like maybe you'll have a bank where it's like this time of year, the way the sun's coming up, it's like this bank is gonna have shade on it all the way until 10, 11 o'clock in the afternoon, something that you can just kind of glue in your hand. Like I said, 5 bites. Just because this time of year is sometimes it's tricky to catch 5 bites, especially the part of the country that I'm in. So
Yeah.
that's kind of that.
Yeah, I like it. Now, what is your lure number 2? I think you said it was a crankbait, correct?
Yeah. So just another crankbait. This is actually, like I said, I'm gearing up to fish a little local tournament tomorrow. It's actually on the Ohio River. Woohoo! So exciting. Fish the Ohio River tomorrow. Um, but this is just a crankbait. This is just kind of this type of bait fish that are at least around me in the Ohio River. This is just a little bomber or no bomb bandit.
It looks
Bandit
like a
square bill.
bandit.
Yeah, bandit square bill. I don't even know what color you would call that, kind of just scattered.
It's like a splatterback, it looks
Yeah,
like.
splatterback. I mean, you can't go wrong with the crankbait, especially around me where the watercolor isn't super clear. Like if we're lucky, we might have a foot and a half of visibility. But I mean, this just resembles some of that smaller bait fish that's around me in my part of the country pretty well. You can and around me there's on the high river there's current, there's laydowns, there's rocks, there's mud, stumps, whatever, and you can just kind of bounce that thing
So,
off of
yeah, you just
everything.
want to be banging cover with it. So
Yeah, pretty
square bill
much.
is your optimal choice of crankbait this time of year, especially around
Yeah.
where you're at.
Yeah, especially around where I'm at. Sometimes I will throw something a little maybe that goes a little bit deeper, just depending on what reservoir I'm on. But I mean, yeah, just some sort of basic shad color, some sort of shady thing. This time of year they're feeding more on shad. They're not as much on crawfish or things like that. So just something that kind of looks beat up, looks kind of compact, not super big, and an easy meal for some bass.
Now, is there a certain like weather condition you would like choose to throw crankbait, and then after you answer that, run right through your setup, like your rod, reel, and line?
Yeah, so weather condition or just days or conditions that I'll throw this. I feel like I'll kind of start with that top water in the morning, and then as that morning bite kind of fades, or if there is or isn't a morning bite, that'll kind of fade, and then I'll go in and I'll kind of, if I'm still in that mode or that mentality of like, hey, I just want to cover water. I'm not fishing specific spots. I'm kind of junk fishing 101, and I just want to cover water. That's where I'll kind of dig into this. Time of day or light sun, clouds, I feel like it doesn't really matter too whole lot of like the ideal crankbait time. But when I'm still in that mode to cover a bunch of water, I'll definitely pick this up. And then my reel, I keep it kind of light again. I try to keep it as light as possible just because, like I said, junk fishing, running and gunning, whatever. Got a Zenon reel on here. And then this is actually the Shane LaHue light crankbait rod, 7.2, medium heavy. This is by Abu. That's a Pro Series, but it's got Shane LaHue's name on it, and he designed it specifically for crankbaits. For crankbait rods, I typically do either that 7 foot or this one's a 7.2. At least for square bills. Then when I get the deeper divers, then I'll have a bigger rod or longer rod on for deeper crankbaits. Yeah, 12-pound fluoro. Every once in a while, when I'm in more sketchy situations or more thicker cover. Sometimes I'll bump that up to 14-pound for cranking, but primarily it's just all 12-pound. Allows that bait to run good and have some good wobbles to it.
I
And
like it.
yeah, and I'll dive in a little bit to retrieval too. So fishing around current, like on the Ohio River, other places. Sometimes when it gets a little bit colder, I don't know. I feel like in the fall I tend to like pause my crankbaits a lot more, just a lot more erratic action kind of. Like I said, I grew up around
So like
current, so it's like
you're reeling in, and then all of a sudden you'll give it a pause, or like if you bump something,
yeah,
like shake the rod and pause it and hold it there.
yeah, yeah. I feel like later in the fall, I just feel like I tend to do that a lot more, just a lot more, kind of not just a steady reel, more of yeah, have that pause or have that little like quick stop and then just go back to normal, quick stop and go back to normal. I feel like I do that a lot more once the water starts to get just a little bit colder.
Yeah, I like it. Now, with a crankbait, we know not every company comes with high quality hooks, and I know for a fact that Bandit and Bomber are one of them that come with terrible hooks on them. So, what would you suggest our viewers use or swap out the treble hooks with? Like, is there a certain brand that you like for the treble
Yeah, so
hooks,
it
or
all yeah, I feel like when I do switch hooks out, I will kind of like um I will kind of play with trebles because not every crankbait runs different, or whether it's a jerkbait crankbait or whatever that has trebles on it. And
does it
you
looks
put
like you have
different.
some EWGs on those, right? Like an extra wide gap style hook.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's what I have on these now. These are kind of actually kind of bent out. I need to change these out before tomorrow. But yeah, because crankbaits are definitely you put different hooks on different baits, and like they're gonna act a lot different. They're gonna sometimes sit a little bit more nose down. Um, but yeah, I've been really impressed with just the Fusion 19s by Berkeley. I mean, out of the box, they're just like super sharp. Become standard on a lot of Berkeley baits, and like that's what I've kind of gained a lot of confidence in. Um, I do have to switch. I do switch them out a lot, just because hooks don't last forever. But I do switch out. But that's kind of what I've leaned towards is the Fusion 19s. But I know there's a lot of really good hooks out there. A lot of really sticky hooks. Yeah. What do you use for switching them out?
Um, so there's all kinds of different ones. I do like the Fusion 19s. I use a ton of Owner ST36 round bends. And then Ichikawa actually has some really
Mm,
nasty sharp treble hooks. So it depends on like what bait it is and how they're reacting and biting it. So like
yeah.
a lot of speed cranks, right? Like some of your faster retrieval, flat-sided spoonbill, I'll go to a round bend, and then with a square bill, I'll throw an EWG, because a lot of times with square bill, I feel like you get a lot of reaction bites when it comes over that cover and they swipe at it. And I want something that's just going to grab them. So I'll go with an EWG. So it all depends on the situation and the lure you're throwing. And
Yeah.
it really isn't a bad treble hook, just there's a lot of really bad stock treble hooks.
Yeah.
So, but
yeah.
it is what it is. All right. Lure number 3. What is it?
Yeah, so the last one, I feel like I've covered 2 reaction style baits so far between the top water and the crankbait. And then so I was like, I gotta pick out something that I'm gonna slow down with, and kind of pick stuff apart, whether it's a lay down, docks, whatever, or if you kind of feel like you're in a high percentage area and you want to slow down. But I was very torn between 2 baits. So I'm just gonna show them both. I know you said
We're gonna have
3.
an honorable mention. I like it.
Yeah. But yeah, it's something that it's not a big. Or I'll share this one first, then this one I'll. It's not a big secret. I just whatever. I'll build up the suspense.
I like it.
But yeah,
Suspense is building for sure.
yeah, just to give the insiders, I was like, oh, Alex likes throwing that. I'll be like, yeah, I like throwing that.
Great.
But this is just something more compact. This is just more of a finesse style jig. This is actually All Train Tackle makes this. This is their finesse jig. It's just something a little bit more slimmer. It's not a big flipping jig or big something poofy that they've probably seen all summer or all spring, all summer. Just something that's a little bit more compact. We got a nice head design on this one. It allows us to kind of go through cover, go through rocks a little bit better. The hook's really stout on it. Just something more compact and more. Like I said, they don't see all that big
Now,
fluke.
do you trim the skirt at all, or do you leave it full length?
Yeah, so I trim it a little bit. I keep it probably like just below that hook, just to trim it up. But it's already kind of like thin enough where it's not, like I said, it's not too floofy. I just put a little zoom crawl in there just to kind of give it a little bit of a design. But I mean, you can't beat a jig. But like I said, I want to keep it compact this time of year. These fish are already pressured. They're already kind of in a funk. They already kind of don't want to bite. So you kind of want to make it easy for them to bite. So that's why I do a little
I like it.
compact finesse
Now,
flipping
do you have a
jig.
go-to color in the jig that you like to throw, or is it just
Uh,
kind of pick up on like a green pumpkin, black and blue, or mix?
yeah,
'Cause
green
that one
pumpkin.
looks like a good mix.
Yeah, I really like something kind of like that blue crawlish. Kind of has some green pumpkin, a little bit of blue. I feel like in the springtime, that's when I'll throw more of either a black and blue or a crawl color, like a real orangey crawl kind of jig. Just when they are on either fishing dirty water or early in the year when they are kind of feeding on crawls. But I kind of like that more summer crawl, blue crawl, whatever you may call it, some kind of green pumpkiny. This one's got a little bit of like bluish flakes in it a
Mm-hmm.
little bit, and then trailer's got some blue flakes. But
Now, are
yeah,
you a big flake guy, or do you not, like you
yeah,
just want standard? Because there's
I
like
like the
there's a big, like, not a controversy, but an argument over like you need flake, you don't need flake, right? Like, and the
yeah.
guys who say you need flake, all of their baits have like tons of flake in it, or it'd be like a very specific flake. And then the guys who say you don't need it just run green pumpkin black and black and blue. So it's kind
Yeah,
of funny to me.
I'm a flake guy, whether it's blue flake, purple flake, sometimes gold flake. I feel like down in Alabama on the Coosa River chain, gold flake is a big deal for some of those southern spotted bass. But yeah, I like flakes. It's just like people that dye their tails in chartreuse. Some people are like, "Oh, that doesn't make a difference with them." There's other people that are like, "Oh, that's all. I gotta have my chartreuse." Um, but yeah, it's kind of the same thing, I think.
It's all your personal confidence. A lure's gonna catch bass. It's just, do we have confidence in, are we confident in throwing it? So
Yeah. Okay, we'll dive in to the last one just
well, hold on,
quickly.
not yet. We need your setup for the
Oh,
jig
oh,
before we.
oh,
So
my setup. Oh no.
yeah, your setup. So rod, reel, line. Are you a fluoro? Are you a braid guy? Braid to fluoro. And where, like, if you're running down, and then I'll throw one last question there. If you're running down the Ohio River, where would you like ultimately be like, the jig might be in your rod box and you're like, oh, I need to pull that jig out because I have this one spot that you're going to throw out. Not to name a spot, but like that one situation that you have like 99.9% confidence that you're going to get bit on a jig in this time of year.
It would probably either be if I'm running down, and I see, so the Ohio River is a lot of shallow, muddy banks. We haven't gotten a lot of rain lately, so it's even more shallow and muddy. So it's like you go to the bank and you got 20 feet of just like water like this until you get to the bank. But every once in a while, there'll either be from the last big storm we had, or rain or whatever, some floods. There'll be a log, okay? The log will be sitting in this much water and there's just muddy bottom. It's dusty. But at the end of that log, it'll be the end of that log, instead of being in this much water, it'll be in like a foot and a half of water. And it'll just be kind of those high percentage places, or where there's places where it's like, I know there's a stump in maybe 2 feet of water. Like I said, the bank on the Ohio River is just a bunch of muddy flats, but every once in a while there's some wood that overhangs deep water, and that's kind of high percentage area. That's where I'm gonna kind of throw this, whether it's on the end of a stump, end of a log, the mouth of a creek sometime, whether it's like a cut bank or kind of a current bank that has a little bit of deeper water. That's where I'm gonna kind of throw this. Where got some rocks mixed in. A rod size. I'm not. This is only. I think this one's a 5/16, maybe a 3/8. Yeah, this one's, I think, a 3/8. Rod. I feel like my standard jig line is just straight 17-pound fluoro. It's just I sometimes I'll go to 20, most times just straight up 17. Keep it basic, and then rod is, I don't have any sitting here, but like a 7.2 heavy, 7.3 heavy, just something. I don't have the super big jig rods. I just like something kind of short, so I can either flip it, I can side cast it, I can cast it under something, be a little bit accurate. Yeah, either like sometimes a 7.2 medium heavy if I bump down to like a 1/4 ounce jig size or something more finesse, but for the most part just like a 7.3 heavy, something kind of long enough to let some bend, and just a straight up either 7:1 gear ratio reel or 8:1 gear ratio. Yeah.
I love it. Now let's hit with the suspense, right? Like, what is our honorable mention lure that you have for the crowd here today?
Yeah. So the honorable mention, this is just something that I just have tons of confidence in. It's something that even in the summer, the spring, the fall, something that's literally like always on my deck. It doesn't matter where we go, what part of the country or anything like that. It's just the old ST, the stupid tube itself. Like I said, it's something that I have tons of confidence in. Something that is just, this kind of just has junk fishing 101 written all over it. You can throw this thing anywhere. You can throw this thing on anything. It's got an action that fish don't see. It's not a Texas rig. It doesn't have an action like a jig. It doesn't have an action like a shaky head. It kind of does whatever it wants. It draws in bites. Like I said, it just junk fishing 101. This is kind of what comes to my mind. Is some sort of stupid tube. I've been doing a lot of playing around with heads. I still haven't found the perfect head, because me personally, this one's a 4-inch tube on this one, but my ideal tube size is a 3.5-inch tube on the stupid tube. And I still, like I said, I'm playing around with jig heads. I haven't found something that I absolutely love, because the stupid tube hookup ratio is not the best to begin with. So I've been playing a lot around with that. I used to use heads that were actually Bass Pro brand heads. They're called the Weedless Wacky Jig Head. But they kind of stopped making it, or they stopped going away. I use 3/16 ounce on those jig heads, but it just kind of complements a 3.5-inch tube very well. But still trying to find the perfect head for it. I got some buddies that make some stupid tube heads, but sorry.
Yeah, here we go. We're gonna challenge all of our viewers who are listening to this on YouTube, or even like on the podcast MP3. If you're listening here, run over to the YouTube page and leave a comment on what you think the best stupid tube jig head is for Alex to use to rig it up.
3.5.
And then he can get for the 3.5-inch tube.
Yeah, because
and we'll give him your feedback.
Yeah, because there's a lot of people that make the stupid tube heads that fit 4-inch tubes really well, but I just love throwing a 3.5. I don't know, just maybe where I'm at or just my confidence level. I just like throwing a 3.5-inch tube a lot better, and there's just not a lot of hooks that fit in a 3.5 without. Yeah, that they just don't look good in a 3.5.
And then are you throwing it on spinning setup or a casting setup?
So I do a bait caster. I do a 7 foot medium heavy, something a little bit more lighter. Like I said, I pretty much always have 3/16 ounce on the tube head, sometimes a quarter, but since I'm dealing with a 3.5-inch tube, I can't get a quarter in there all that much. But yeah, something just a little bit more lighter weight.
Something just a little bit lighter, I think, is what he's saying. I'm not sure what happened with Alex's feed over here, but the stupid tube is not something that I have too much familiarity with. It's not something I have thrown a whole heck of a lot. I'm going to remove him here because he's frozen pretty bad. And when he comes back, we'll bring him in. But I think a little synopsis of the top 3 lures that Alex is using with the top water, the square bill, and the jig. I think those are all great choices for the late summer to fall transition. Chapo is just something that you can cover a ton of water with. A square bill just gets bait. You can bang it and beat it off of just about anything, and you're going to get bit if you put it in a high percentage areas. And a jig is just a great way to slow down, to match the forage in your area, and just get a lot of bites. And looks like Alex is about to come back in here. He probably got a phone call or something. Perfect. Here he is. All right. Welcome back.
Oh yeah, sorry about that.
No, you're fine. So back to the stupid tube. I was just kind of running down the 3 lures, and then I was getting into the stupid tube as you came back into the queue, but kind of back on the casting rod setup we were talking about before you abruptly froze.
Yeah, so more lighter weight because I am dealing with either a 3/16, sometimes a quarter ounce, 7 foot, medium heavy rod, just something I can whip around, cast easily. But one thing I've noticed with just the hookup ratio, like I said, it's not stupid tube hookup ratios are not very good. It's one of those things where once you do peg them, once you do set the hook, you cannot let off. Like you almost have to winch them all the way in just because you're just not dealing with a lot of room for like when that fish. Let's see if I can do this where you guys can see it. When that fish bites, you're just not dealing with a lot of like wiggle room for that fish to get their mouth in. You just have not even a quarter of an inch of available hook there to get that fish in. So once you do hook them, you just kind of gotta horse them in for sure. You gotta get them in the boat quickly, otherwise, I don't know, just not a lot of hook there.
Got it. That's perfect. Just don't hook yourself while doing it. Well, I have one last question for you, Alex. I'm going to let you run here, and it's our Do It Molds juice of the show, and maybe that's something we can talk to them about, getting a Do It Mold stupid tube head made so people can pour them, so we get the proper hook for each size of bait on the tube. But the Do It Molds juice of the show is, if you had one tip for anyone fishing this tricky time of year, what would it be?
I would just say do not get discouraged. I feel like I can count so many different times, so many different trips out that I've just been humbled or have gotten off the water just with my head down, like I have no idea what these fish are doing right now. But just don't get discouraged. Keep your head up. It's just the time of year. It's just what's going on right now. The fishing is going to get better from here on out. So don't get discouraged. Keep covering water. Um, just yeah, keep your confidence up. You're doing the right things. It's just the cards that we're dealt with right now.
Yeah.
Things are going to get better. The water's going to get cooler. It'll be all right.
Perfect. I appreciate it. Thanks for joining us, Alex. Good luck tomorrow in your little club derby that you're fishing with the good old boys. Those are some of my favorite events, like just hanging out with the guys and seeing people you haven't seen in a while. And it's just an overall good time. So I hope you go catch them up on the forever, always stingy Ohio River. And we'll chat with you soon, buddy.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks
Yeah.
for having me on.
All right, man. You have a good night, and we'll talk soon.
Yep.
See ya. All right, everyone. Well, thanks for tuning in to this week's episode here on the Lure Lab, where we talk with Alex Redwine about his top 3 lures for that stingy late summer into fall transition. And he even included an honorable mention bait without us asking, which was really cool of him to give up some juice on the stupid tube. It's not a bait that you hear too many people talk about. So that was really cool to see. And how he rigs it and that he throws it on casting gear, which is even more surprising to me. Usually when I think of tubes, I think of spinning gear, but I also am one who throws a normal tube on casting gear a lot. Maybe that's an episode I can dive into here in the future. If you'd like to see that, leave it down in the comments below or reach out on our social media. But as always, if you're on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. If you're new here, leave a comment if you use any of these baits or whatever your favorite bait is to use in this transition period. We greatly appreciate it. And if you're on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or whatever podcast platform that you listen on, please leave us a review if you are able to. It helps this podcast be seen by more people who love to go bass fishing. And until next weekend, we will see you then.